I'll record. Okay.
Welcome back to Pedagogy Non Grata, where we bridge the gap between the scientific literature and teaching in the classroom. Today, I am joined here by James Thornock. Am I pronouncing that right, James?
That's exactly correct.
And we're going to be taking things in a very different direction than normal. But I thought it was kind of apt. Normally on Pedagogy Non Grata, we look at things from a very academic perspective. But James here is all about something very practical. But I think every teacher should have knowledge of this area. So his area of expertise is teaching kids how to code and technology in the classroom. So I think that's a really exciting topic. And I'm really happy to share that with our audience. So James, before I say anything else that's incorrect, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on the program. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, a little bit about myself. So, um, much like yourself, how much does the audience know about you when you're like teaching background and history teacher and all that?
Uh, they know, I guess, a little bit about my background. It's not, I
Okay.
don't spend a lot of time talking about my personal life, but it's a bit.
Sure. So anyway, I have history teaching history at a seventh grade level in a public school system here in the Houston area. So that's kind of my background. I did that for a year, right? So if taking any advice from this, it's probably going to mostly come from my experience with coder kids. Um, but I do feel like I had that, first year teacher experience where you have no idea what's going on and you're trying to get used to the paperwork and you have all these hopes and dreams of the kind of teacher that you want to be and you're meeting a lot of like harsh realities. So like I definitely went through all those and I definitely understand that. Um, but I didn't get to like a decade of teaching and like the wisdom gained through that experience. I took a different route. But yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree in history and a minor in philosophy. And but what I do, what my day job has been for the last about 2.5 years, is running this after school and summer camp coding company, and we do private tutoring as well. And I'm constantly interfacing with technology for educational purposes and for business purposes and all sorts of things. And so I get pretty opinionated about my software, and I think I have a lot of tools that can be used that I think people should know about.
That sounds
That's a
awesome.
that's a long intro. Goodness.
I actually, that was a short intro, to be honest. I thought that was perfectly fine. So I think the first question I have for you is why do you think teachers should be using technology in their classroom?
Yeah, I mean, like, in the broadest possible sense, like technology is like everything at this point, because like if fire is an invention, then everything else is an invention, right? Like the pencil, graphite, like just literal like pencil lead, which isn't lead anymore, it's graphite, is an incredible technological innovation. And then the pen, and then I've got like markers and colored pencils, and then but then we're talking, obviously, when you say technology, you mean digital technology, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I would just say it's just to really be the best possible teacher, you have to use the best possible technology. And some people are going to get this feeling like, oh, but you're just going to put kids on screens all day. And I would say, no. Even like we do coding camps all the time. We have 3 7-hour camps, Monday through Friday. And I require that my instructors take non-screen time during camps, do push-ups, do jumping jacks, run around the room, play with Pokemon cards, talk face to face with each other before we go back to whatever coding activity. And that's something that's educational. That's a computer camp, and we take breaks. And so I think that digital technology is just the natural evolution of the same processes that it took us to create a pencil with graphite in it, so we wouldn't get lead poisoning from chewing on our pencils, and and uh, and so on. And it's not something to be feared, but it's something that can really leverage your skills as a teacher, those things that are irreplaceable by digital technology, like your personality, like your understanding of individual students, like your passion to help them succeed. Like technology can't do that or replace it, but it can augment that. And I think that's what can help you just increase your reach.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. So full disclosure, I come at these sorry, at teaching from a sort of unique lens in that I'm always looking at the statistical evidence behind teaching methodologies and interventions to see does the evidence in the scientific literature support the use of a teaching concept. And actually, the evidence behind technology is very weak. But
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
feel like it's this one place where the evidence is just wrong. And I feel like part of it is just because it's not just um, is technology useful, because technology is such a wide thing. Like if you give a bad teacher with no knowledge of technology, computers in their classroom, I don't know that they're going to use that in a way that is the most efficient, that's really going to help their students. I feel like there's so many different types of tools out there. It really matters the specifics of how you use it more than you have access to it. Same as like part of it, I think too, is like some of the studies are like based off the 90s, and like I don't know how great the
Mhm.
technology we had to help kids learn was in the 90s, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more. And a lot of times it's tough on teachers. I mean, there's mandatory professional development that has to happen, right? Um, for you to renew your certification. Obviously, this varies country by country and state by state, but um, like teachers have a ton on their plate, and what I experienced is that these technology solutions are often rolled out like district school district by school district, and they're just like given to everyone. And I think honestly I had so many tools, and I certainly wasn't using them all properly to the fullest extent. And I don't think you can in a year's time. I mean, I think to be a really great teacher you've got to be doing it for more than a year like I did it. You got to be doing it for a little bit longer. But I mean, just think about it. Like you give everybody a motorcycle, right? It's like not everyone's gonna even use the motorcycle. Like if we just decided to give everyone, so elect me president, I'll give you a motorcycle, right? But the if you,
It's quite the platform.
yeah, it'd be like so dangerous of a platform. But
The most deaths
you
of
know,
any
like it's not
president.
like average, you know, um it's not like everyone would use a motorcycle well or like even want to use it. If you give everyone a smart board, I guarantee you, like I cannot. Okay, I can't guarantee anything. But I'm just going to estimate that about 90% of the teachers that get a smart board that costs around like 6 grand, because I looked it up. Like I'm talking about like the Promethean boards that you can like tap on and write on and stuff. I think about 95% of those are used as TVs, which you could get for $400, right?
Yeah.
And I tried to use the fun features and stuff, and that was great a couple of times a year. But honestly, I mostly use it as a TV. That again, you could have gotten for $400, maybe $500, and spent um, less than a tenth the cost, right? So I do think there's when you're talking about making changes in education, I do think economics does have at least a small role to play
Sure it
because
does.
a lot of the tools, I'm sure we're going to get to this, but a lot of the tools I'm going to mention are going to be completely free, really absolutely free, and super useful. And some tools, cost money, but then save you time. So then it's like, how much is your time worth? And a lot of these are business questions, and that you know don't come from my college experience, don't come from my public school experience, but from being in a business and learning, okay, what's going to save me time during the day, what's going to reduce me working 65 hours a week to maybe 64, and you know improve communication, and that's, I think, something that everyone can agree leads to better educational outcomes, right? Like, how do you increase communication with parents? How do you increase communication with students? And then how do you remember what you said in the classroom and all that good stuff? So,
Yeah. I'm gonna date myself here. a little bit. But when I first became a teacher, it was the sort of the first year that smartboard boards really came out onto the market, and I was told that they cost $100,000 per smartboard. And I remember that, like,
Oh, this
within about
hurts.
yeah, within about 2 years of teaching, every single classroom I ever walked into had a smartboard, and yet most of the teachers did not use them for anything more than a whiteboard, like you said. And to be honest, I actually make my own smartboard games. My wife and I make them,
Oh,
and
nice. That's cool.
so we make and sell smartboard games. But at the same time, even I often don't use the smartboard for like more than whiteboard, because even the games we make, they're interactive and you can use the touch features on the board for them. But I actually find that part of the technology is really, it sucks for whatever, like the number of times like a kid like goes to press the thing and it's not coordinated properly, and then
Mm.
you have to redo your alignment. It's such a pain in the butt. I often just I let the kid click, but I secretly click with my mouse on my computer to the spot that they
Mm.
clicked without the kid knowing. Uh, but I don't know. I think you raise a really good point though about technology too. I think it's not just that technology can help students learn. It's that I think the success of our nations in the future is going to depend on how well kids are versed in technology. Every job a kid's going to have is going to be rely on technology. I know I'm in Ontario, and
Mm.
our government just made it mandatory that all students are to learn how to code in elementary school, which is
Yeah, yeah, I heard about that.
it's scary for me because I have to teach coding next year, and I don't know anything about coding, so we have to
I'll
learn
help
it
you
all
out.
the time.
It's good.
But at the same time, like I think that's amazing. Like, and teachers are upset, I think, to some extent, because they're like, we don't know anything about coding. But like, I think in the future, like this will be a really good thing. Like, I think most countries will do the same over time too.
Yeah, yeah, and I've been on a couple homeschool, I've had homeschoolers on my podcast. I've gone on 1 or 2 homeschooling podcasts, and, I'm sure there are, like, all sorts of different opinions about, like, what mandatory schooling is, like, because 'cause you're right, like, when a government says, like, "Hey, this is something that's important, this is something that we value," that doesn't endow public school teachers with, like, a gift of knowledge, and, like, it's not like, boom, they know how to teach it, right? Um, and so, obviously, I think coding is valuable as well. Obviously, this is my livelihood year round, this is what I do, 24/7, 365, except when I'm, asleep. I would say, yeah, so I guess to the, teachers in Ontario and, elsewhere who've kinda received this news, I'd say, look, coding is like a perfect marriage of science and the arts, and, so there and it's really, really I mean, you can do it for your entire life and still do it. It's more like language learning, honestly,
I was about to
than
say that actually.
just mathematics, although everything starts in math. Um, and so it can be really beautiful and it can be really daunting, but all coding is basically sequential logic and logical thought processes and reasoning. And then you take that logic and um, you kind of make art out of it, or you make something that's functional, or you make an app, or what have you. So
You know, there's studies showing that teaching kids how to play chess improves their academic performance in school. And I
yeah.
like that, and it's not like an amazing like impact, but it's significant. In fact, it's a bigger impact than a lot of popular teaching interventions. And I usually bring this up to make fun of these popular teaching interventions, to be honest. But at the same time, like there's a very statistically relevant impact of teaching kid how to play chess. And I kind of wonder if teaching kid how to code would be similar, because they're both very logical and rational.
Yeah, yeah, and what we do, I mean, we teach through a project-based mindset, so kind of a Montessori model, right? Which a lot of parents and teachers are going to be familiar with.
Mhm.
Um, and kids are often, I would say, like especially public school kids, because we teach, private school and charter schools and homeschools. Well, homeschools. I don't know if like a homeschool exists, right? Like the home is the school in that scenario. But anyway, all of these kids, um, we we kind of teach them to break rules. We say things like it's okay to cheat from your friend, like you can steal their code. And we use these words because they're forbidden, right? Like you're not supposed to do that in a public school context. And then they look like over their shoulder and they get all excited and they're like, the teacher told me to cheat. Like, is this are you okay? Like, did I hear you right? Like there's just this huge moment of disbelief. Um so we give them like new opportunities and then at the same time when they ask questions, sometimes we'll answer a question with the actual like whatever the like proper answer is and then sometimes we say, "Well, I don't know, what do you think?" And then if they don't know, which often happens, and we say, "Well, if you were going to solve the problem, what would you try first?" And then they could say either I don't know or I think I need to try with these blocks. And then you can kind of like guide them, but not like bludgeon them with the answer. Right. And then sometimes we just straight up say, like, I'm not going to tell you that. Like, it's going to be a lot more fun if you figure it out on your own. You should look in like this general area or try using these blocks of code and see what you can do. And it's really frustrating for some kids who just like, can you just tell me the answer? Like, I know it, and we do. but but like a kid's going to be with coder kids for a couple of camps. If we're lucky, we get to keep them for private tutoring and kind of usher them up to a college level, which is great. So
That's
please do
really
that.
cool. That's very cool.
but if not, I mean, the majority of our students, they're going to be with us for a little bit and then they're going to be gone. Education is ephemeral in that way, where it seems like this is your teacher forever, but then the next year, like they disappear unless you awkwardly run into them in the grocery store, right? So I I'm more interested in giving my students the ability to see a problem for what it is and be able to creatively address it without me eventually because like they're not going to have me after this week or after a couple of weeks or after private tutoring lessons have come to an end. I want them to really be able to move the needle. And like I get we have Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite camps that are like gaming camps that have very little educational value that are mostly like socially strengthening and focus on communication skills. Um and we also have obviously coding camps, but so what I'm trying to say is we have a lot of fun at camp, but we really care about these kids' future. And I know for a fact that, um, you know, I'm only one teacher. I run a very small company. I'd love for these ideas to get out and for kids to have the opportunity to see their problems through a chess mindset or a coding mindset where they can see a problem clearly and then think sequentially and logically about its possible solutions, be able to experiment and then determine if those solutions actually are viable. And I think that's great for corporate America jobs or solving your own personal problems and relationships and kind of everything in between. So,
Yeah, I mean, uh, there's a lot of terminology to describe what you're talking about. I would say that that's an intentional mindset or a growth mindset is what it sounds like you're trying to teach. But at the same time,
yeah.
I feel like what you're really trying to say is you want them to have self-efficacy. You want them to be able to solve their own problems on their own without the support of a teacher or an instructor. As a teacher, I want the same thing, and you hope that all teachers want the same thing. I loved your comment about cheating. You know,
Kids do too.
yeah, but it's so true. It's funny. My wife taught for some time. She's not teaching right now, but she taught for some time. And I would like try to give her some of my lesson plans, and she said, "Isn't that like dishonest if I borrow your lesson plan?" And I'd be like, "No, because we're not like this isn't being graded. You can't get in trouble for
These
cheating.
are
Like
not corporate secrets, yeah.
this is copy as much as you want. I copy stuff all the time as a teacher. What are you talking about?" Uh, and I think there can be something healthy to that. I mean, I don't think it's healthy for like a math test or like a language paper to hand in someone else's work, but at the same time, to borrow elements from somebody else or to learn something from another person, I think is just self-efficacy.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing too. you can allow that, and you can also check for understanding. So that's another kind of buzz term where you can walk by a student's desk and you can say, "Hey, I see you got this code here." And maybe you saw it on another kid's screen too, right? The exact, format and everything. Like, "Hey, can you explain that for me?" And then they'll either go, "Well, or they'll hesitatingly explain it or whatever, but within about 5 seconds, you know if they, like, actually get it or not. And then you can have a
Beautiful.
teaching moment, because if they understand they have code there and they can explain it, then they feel super proud, and if not, then you can say like, "Oh, cool, well, obviously you found that code, let me explain that." And the code's already at work, already doing work for them, and so they have a reason to understand it. Um, and there's something beautiful about coding specifically where the like in a math class, where do the problems come from typically?
Typically, well, I write them and I put them on the board.
Exactly, right? So they come from the teacher. The problems in coding typically come from the user themselves. So they have this idea of this game they want to build, and let's say there's a score element. Well, the problem is they know that the score needs to go up. They have no idea how to even get started on that. And so you can kind of give them some breadcrumbs, but they'll be able to figure it out. And the reason they're so motivated to do this innately is because they want to create the dang game,
Yeah.
right? It's not like I told them the game they needed to make. We have some awesome curricula that allows them to choose from sets of projects. But within those frameworks, and they're just frameworks, they get to choose the exact like expression of the project. And because of that, man, the motivation, like I don't need to do almost anything except show them like a couple cool examples that we've done to make, to follow the framework. But and then they come up with these really cool ideas, and then they get to pursue them. And then once the problems are their own, then man, they learn so fast. So
I'm an amateur musician, and it's weird. A lot of what you're telling me about reminds me of music because I love writing songs. And you always have a part of a song that doesn't quite work right, and you have to play with it and figure out something else. And oftentimes you'll look up musical theory and try and like just find that perfect note or transition or chord to really make it work. And it's problem solving to try and get that art piece at the end that you want. But so this kind of like transitions me to the next part and asking
sure.
like what does this look like? So like what apps are you using? What
Yeah.
technology do you want to see kids learn? What do you think are the best tools for the trade?
Yeah. So, first up, I would say get really good at communication. One of the painful lessons that I was dealt at the beginning of the coronavirus, sorry, phone alarm. One of the lessons that I was dealt painfully at the beginning of the coronavirus was I am filtered by the microphone that I'm using, by how fast my computer is, by my internet connection. I'm filtered through all of the like you don't see James Thornock, you see a digital representation of myself. And so I went out and bought this microphone, and um and I upped my game. I got a green screen. You know, I did some very like practical things. These were not free, but I'm using software right now, OBS, open broadcasting software that anybody can download for free. I'm actually using OBS and OBS Streamlabs, um, one to record and one to do the whole virtual webcam thing. I can even demonstrate here. I don't know if there's going to be a video version, but I can move logos around and stuff in real time. I can change the background. I can cause glass to break in the background. Like I can do all sorts of stuff. Um, so if you are constantly in video calls, if you are in um, if you're recording audio for your students, or if you're making phone calls to parents or anything, sometimes hardware is a good place to start. And so I would recommend light. I have way too many lights actually in here, but some upgraded lighting, a nice green screen, those things will help. But as far as the actual software, I'd say OBS is great for um, it's just another tool that you can use to, manipulate um, kind of your surroundings. I've got Minecraft in the background for me. Um, but as far it really just depends on like what you're trying to do. If you're communicating in a classroom setting, we
Yeah.
have we use Discord, which is actually originally created as just a voice chatting uh, program for gamers, right?
Yeah.
It's got an interesting name. Anybody is like Discord. That sounds like something that's not. It's like fighting, right? Um, so Discord is really great for communication. Those familiar with the kind of the corporate tool Slack, it's basically like a full replacement for that, but it has video chatting as well, so it can replace Zoom, which I'm sure doesn't need to be talked about at this point. Although
No.
Zoom is another free tool, it's just not as secure, and they're really leaky about their data. So Discord, basically, you can create channels. In these channels, you can either have voice conversations, you can have video calls, you can have video calls with 25 people, you can have 25 people sharing their screens at the same time. It's pretty wild. You can have other channels that are text channels where you can type text and chat that way. You can use gifs and funny images. You can post files and share files. It's kind of the whole thing.
Hey,
So
some people
although
almost
I'm
use it like a social media app, don't they?
some people do like and a lot, I mean, the world, mostly the world uses Discord to play like Minecraft together. Like that's really what
I
Discord
so
is mostly used for.
I'm full disclosure, I'm a huge nerd. I play video games all the time. And all of my video game friends use Discord, but I don't play
Yeah.
Minecraft. I know
Yeah.
all about Minecraft because my students love it. So I
Yeah.
know I can tell you so much information about Minecraft, but I've never ever sat down and played Minecraft. But I think
It's fun.
Discord's used for like all video games, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so I just think it has great educational application. I mean, so when I'm coding on my screen, I can share my screen, show my students. They can see it in real time. Um, what's super essential is that they share their screen so I can see the code on their screen and see what's going on and be able to help them make the next step. There are chat logs, one of the downsides of Zoom, which, in full disclosure, we're using right now, right? So it's not
Yeah.
a terrible software. It's great. The part of the problem with a video call is like you end the call and then the chat log just vanishes into thin air. Discord just hangs around and it stays there. And so if our students want to access the curriculum that we posted, the slideshows that we posted in the chat, they can see those later after class is done. They can also one of the worst things about traditional video calling is that you have to be like immediately on time, and if you're not immediately on time, or if you try to come early to a Zoom, you're like punished with this like weird waiting limbo zone.
Yeah.
um in Discord, you can join like hours early and you can just hang out in a channel and, get familiar with the space and then come back whenever you need to. And so it reduces a little bit the bottleneck. We've had up to 60 students in a class before, and heaven forbid we get 60 parents and their children all joining a same call at the same time. The kind of technical support that I need to do on my end is impossible to do in a window of time of 10 minutes. It's just not
Mhm.
possible. And so it enables us as teachers to say like, "Hey, come join a day early and make sure your tech works." And so that's pretty nice. So that's a little bit in the weeds about Discord, something that we're super happy about. Um, yeah, there's a lot of different software. It really depends on like
Well,
what you're trying to do.
what about for teaching specifically? Like, do you have an app you use for coding? Is there other apps that you really recommend?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, specifically for coding, I could talk to you all day, but the kind of bullet point list, I'd say code.org is a great place for everyone
I'm
to
going to
start.
write this down, code.org, because I have to teach this.
Please do, yeah. So code.org has age appropriate courses and they will tell you the ages and you can make a class section and give kids their individual logins if you want. They don't have to be logged in, but if you want to be able to track it, they've got a very visual tracking system and it's completely free. Like you can't pay for it if you wanted to, kind of free. So that's good
Wow,
stuff.
that's awesome.
Um, we use a tool developed by MIT, which is Scratch, and it's scratch.mit.edu, and that is an incredible tool. This one, so the philosophy of code.org is like kind of like a math problem. Like, hey, here's the problem. You got to add the code to solve it, right?
Mhm.
Scratch is the opposite, which says, here is a blank canvas. Do with it what you will, and there's no structure at all. And so we like to use both because they're both useful. But um, if you want true freedom, Scratch is really nice. And it's a drag and drop coding language. So you're not typing complicated syntax and
So
getting lost
I
there.
really have a question about that. Actually,
Sure.
I've been waiting to ask you this question all night as I wait to
Yeah.
hear for this. So I see a lot of different apps and like teach kids how to code programs out there where it's all drag and drop,
Sure.
or it's all very plain English and it's not real coding. It's not actually
Sure.
in coding language. And I get that maybe like the idea is like they're learning the logic behind coding,
Sure.
but I also wonder like how much are they really learning from these types of apps when there's no actual coding language in it? And I don't even know if teachers realize that there's no coding language in it because a lot of teachers probably have zero familiarity with coding.
Yeah. Well, Scratch, for instance, runs on JavaScript. So I mean, there's another coding language behind it, right? And JavaScript, like every coding language, had to be built on a previous coding language, except like the first one, which like I actually don't know what that is at this point in its evolutionary history.
I thought it
So
was binary.
yeah, yeah, for sure, ones and zeros. Um, yeah, and then anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too off into the weeds. So yeah, what is like real coding? What is not? You know, what are like what's actually being learned in drag and drop versus like actually typing in syntax and stuff. I would say that Scratch is technically like quote unquote real coding, um, because like you can code it incorrectly and it is broken and it won't fix it for you. And so I think that's like real coding you can fail at. Like code.org for the most part, like the 90% of the site is like math problems and it'll tell you like exactly what you got wrong or it'll give you hints at exactly what you can do right. Scratch won't do that. It'll just not work. Like there's no like you just got to figure it out. And so that's why obviously we have teachers and we can help with that. Um when so what is actually being learned in Scratch is these couple of principles and I'll tell you. So sequential logic, right? You know, you prepare the food, you plate the food, you eat the food, you do the dishes, right? Like doing the dishes that are already clean doesn't make any sense, right? So there's that sequential logic. There's conditional logic, which is um, the the program checks to see if something is true, and if it is true, it makes another action. An example of this would be like my mom told me, you know, when it's 5 p.m., you wash your hands, you come down, sit down at the table, and you eat dinner with the family. If it's not 5 p.m., you best stay out of the kitchen, right? Like, so there's like an if this is true, you do this thing. If this is not true, then you don't do it. And, you know, my mom, you know, I was like, I think 11 when she told me that, but it really stuck with me. And for some reason, so we use these rules in our own lives, but putting them in a context of coding helps us understand that computers are like your dumbest and smartest friend They do not understand context. They don't understand human language. Um, it's like a really powerful machine, and you have to be insanely specific. You can't say, "Hey, computer, go walk like across the room." Boston Dynamics has to have worked on that project for decades before they can get a robot to walk across a room, right? Because they have to be insanely specific. So the once you've kind of done a drag and drop style thing, you've learned the principles of coding that translates extremely well into quote unquote real coding language like Python, Java, C++, all the grown up coding languages. Um, One transitionary kind of step that we like, and it's actually our most popular class, is Roblox Studio. So this is, that's another tool you can use. Again, absolutely free. You literally cannot pay for it. It's just free. And it allows anybody, but we use it with kids, to create their own Roblox game. Well, you can add assets and create blocks and stuff, and none of that requires any coding. But if you select a block and you click on properties, you can literally write scripts for it. And the coding language they use is Lua. And that's a real language that has syntax that, if you put the semicolon in the wrong place, it'll break stuff. Um, and so that's a really good way to see what you type, and to see the immediate feedback loop, to see like, okay, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Is it right, but is it too fast? Is it too slow? And then, yeah, so that's like quote unquote real. But I would say that we start with drag and drop because it really does teach the logic with by lowering the frustration bar, and then allowing them to upgrade their skills as they understand more abstract concepts.
So okay, so you're the Minister of Education. When
Okay.
do you start teaching actual languages, and what language do you start with?
Gosh dang it. Okay, the libertarian in me hates this question, right? Like, if you were God King of the universe, what would you do? It's like, oh gosh, like libertarians hate that because they don't actually want to be king. But I would say, what we do is, we start 5 years old with very, very simple logic. And then in third grade, um, do the grades go appropriately across country lines here?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. All
Our
right. I
curriculums
thought so.
so I've actually looked at your curriculum documents because
Okay.
I sell products to both Canada and United States. Our
Okay,
curriculum
cool.
documents, they're very similar.
Okay. So in third grade typically is when we start Scratch, and then in fourth and fifth grade we start like a Roblox Studio, and then we start in fifth grade. We really recommend um, Scratch first if you haven't done it, but then Python and Java and C++ and all of these like grown up languages that they actually start teaching in college. But what we find is intellectually the brain is ready enough for abstract concepts at that age on average for kids. It happens with girls actually faster. They're able to get into Scratch sooner and into Python sooner for some reason. I literally have no idea why that is. I've just observed it in my classrooms like time and time again, and I have literally don't have any explanation for it. But and guys like blowing stuff up. they like they like to put blood in their projects and stuff, and are like, okay, turn it green or purple or something. Like we don't, but they they like a lot of action.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say you can start really, really early. And I'm kind of gonna experiment on my son. So he's a year and a half old right now. And a week or two ago, I got him to press a button on this like Xbox controller, and then my Switch, and I like pointed up to the screen, and I showed like, hey, if I press this A, you know,
Your guy jumps.
this character jumps. Yeah, exactly.
A is always the
You even
jump
knew what
button.
it was. You even knew it was a jump. Anyway, yeah, this
Always
guy
jump.
does know what he's talking about. So, and my son saw that, and he can't. I mean, he knows the words like no and mama and dada and Jesus. Those those are the words that he knows, right? And one of those, and like three of those are names, right? So there's only one word, like, which is no. But yet he can recognize that, like, when he does this, this happens. And so I don't know. I'm gonna test out of my son and see like how early we can do this stuff, and I'll get back to you.
I
But
love that. I
I
would
think it's earlier
love to
rather
do
than
a
later.
follow-up interview in like 3 years with how that went.
Yeah,
I am so into experiments. I experiment on my own classes all the time.
yeah.
That's I don't know. So what would you use to teach code? Do you need to? Is there any good apps to teach like an actual language code?
Yeah, so you need a coding environment, enable like in order to be able to write any kind of code. Now, in the past, you used to have to download different programs for different languages. It used to be fairly complicated. If you were to code on like your home computer, like I have right in front of me right now, that code wouldn't be available to me if I were to go to an office. This is, of course, imagining I have an office outside of my home, which I don't, right? But um, now, I mean, there's a great tool called REPL. We did an interview with the founder of REPL, R E
How do I spell
P
that? Help me out here.
REPL.IT. So he's the founder of Replit, and his name's Amjad. And great guy, great guy. Did an interview you can listen to, but he ran into this problem, and he basically just wanted to make code like Google Docs. So those of you familiar with that, where if you edit something, you can save it, it saves automatically, and it can be in basically any coding language. So now, where you used to have all these different environments and these different programs that you had to download, you can basically go to repl.it. It's not .com, it's just, repl.it. Create an account that's free. And they have educational tools and resources where you can, like build classrooms and stuff. And you can code in basically any environment for almost any language, Python, tons and tons of things. And you can see the languages play out right in front of your eyes. If they are bugging, they don't work, they don't break your own computer, which is nice because they're not really running on your computer. They're running on a server farm somewhere, wherever, they have their servers, right? And so that is a free resource that is really trying to simplify, the whole coding process. So I'd say code.org, scratch.mit.edu, repl.it. Those are awesome. Roblox Studio, that's another great app. And the Roblox education website that goes along with it. They give you project ideas and things. And I mean, I think that's, and then there's the Unity game engine. Haven't talked about that one. So this is more for like middle and high schoolers, but Unity game engine is excellent. And you can make 3-dimensional video games from your house, and there's like a great collaboration. You can also do stuff in the Unreal game engine, but
Is
those,
is Unity free or does it cost money?
yeah, it is also free.
That's
It's
cool.
wild. Like a lot of these things are actually really, really free. Um,
That is wild, actually.
yeah. So
You know what? This is the first time I've ever done an interview where I've sat here with a pen and paper and been writing down the things the person is saying. Because I'm teaching grade 8 next year, and I'm going to be teaching grade 8's coding, and they have a year of learning coding, and I have zero experience, so I'm going to be behind them. So I got to have some things.
well, I'm sure we could do another call before the, semester actually starts. I can hook you up, definitely.
Okay.
Obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't recommend this stuff, we use. A lot of these tools are great. They are absolutely free, and a lot of them are daunting, and you have no idea where to start with them because they're similar to Scratch in that there's like, oh, it's a blank slate. What do you want to do? Like, I have no idea, right? And so there are things that you can learn that will help you learn coding, but through a different context. And the another kind of sister skill is like principles of game design. So that's something that doesn't really have to do with coding, and it's really just the mechanics of telling a story, right? So, um, what are the characters going to be like? What's their what's the problem in the story? What are they trying to overcome? What's the adversity? Is there an enemy? Is there a environmental problem in the story? What's going on? And then what's the resolution? How do you want the player to feel when they're playing this game? You want them to be calm? Do you want them to be like really competitive and like exhilarated? Do you want to surprise them and scare them? You know, like what do you want to happen? And then you build a game which is an experience, and then you build a game in order to kind of achieve that purpose. And so with that story framework, because that's what it is, it's literally storytelling, you can say, oh, well, I see this new platform, and this platform is good for this kind of storytelling, so then I'm gonna tell this kind of a story. And otherwise, they're kind of like a lifeless puppet. It's like, oh, that's a really cool puppet, but like I don't know what to do with that. That's weird. I'm not a marionette. Like I'm not a puppeteer. I have no idea what the heck is that. And so having some of the more creative and expressive tools will actually help and inform the way that you use what are just astounding and actually truly free tools. So
That's awesome. That's really cool. Although I don't know, I can think of some video games without storylines. Personally, to just nerd out on video games for a quick second, I actually hate storylines in video games.
yeah,
I try and skip through them as fast as possible so I can get to just the competitive part where I beat another player. But
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
super competitive. I love PvP.
Okay, well that's good. Well, and see that can be designed for, right? And this, but I would disagree, and I'd say there's always a story, and the story is so like, what's your favorite game?
Well, my favorite game of all time is a storytelling game, so that it's not a great example, but it's not the story that I like it for.
What's a game that's like as storyless as you can think of?
I would say Fortnite and Warzone are pretty storyless.
So, yeah, Fortnite certainly has started. Well, not the main game. That's all story based, but the battle royale, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, they've since added stories, but originally you just like drop on an island. So the storyless story that is actually there is there are 100 players, and then you're battling to become the best, and you don't stop until you are the best. And so it's the Pokemon theme. It's like, you're fighting to be the very best like no one ever was. And so the story is you becoming the ultimate hero and the strongest version of yourself. Now
See,
that's
I
all
gotta disagree with you
subtext.
though.
Yeah.
I think the subtext is that you're a murderer and that you're murdering as many people as you can and trying not to get murdered yourself. Like, I think you're doing a
Just
really great job
survival.
of making this sound friendly to all the parents out there, but it's a pretty dark game when you think about it. I can't believe that Fortnite became like the #1 child game of all time. And it's just like, let's have all the kids murder each other. But sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like, yeah, you can also view it through that lens. Absolutely. Right. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, we're talking like shotguns and pistols and ARs and rocket launchers and grenade launchers and bows and arrows and yeah, like legit weapons. But because there's no blood, and because when you shoot someone, they get like beamed up Scotty instead of like getting
Kids game.
disfigured, then it's like okay, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But that's a fair criticism.
You know what? My audience is going to be really confused because most of the time I'm talking about statistics, and
Mhm.
today I'm talking about video games. But so, what about outside of coding? What are there any suggestions or anything that you see? Maybe like, are there essential skills that you want to see kids graduating school from able to know or able to do?
Yeah, so I mean, essential skills that I would say like I wish I had, like cuz I can be an expert on that, like what I wish I would have had. Um I wish I would have tried coding out. if you're an adult and you're listening to this, which I assume is probably most of your audience,
I don't think I have
I would
any kids.
say go to scratch.mit.edu and mess around for an hour or two and see what you can build and try it out. And the time investment in doing that will help you at least like kind of understand the realm that programmers and the software engineers, what world they're even in. And even doing that a couple of hours will give you a better idea. So I want that for our kids. I think for them to be exposed to coding and the basic fundamental principles will bless their lives and give them tools to be able to do whatever it is, whether it's creative writing, whether it's storytelling, like I was talking about, whether it's literally math, whether it's creating, um, what's it called? Fluid dynamics for NASA's rockets. I have one of our previous instructors actually working on that. Um, her name's Emily Umble, and she's working for a contractor who with NASA, and
That's
so
crazy.
that's something she's doing. So
You just
you can
casually work
actually
with
do
rocket
rocket
scientists.
science. What's that?
You work with rocket scientists. Not a big deal.
Yeah, so you could do rocket science, but it also teaches you how to tell better stories. So, and everything in between. That I do disagree with the narrative though that every kid is going to be a coder. Like I just don't think that's realistic. I don't think it's necessary. Um, but I do think it's really useful to understand what it is and to be able to dip into it if you need to, and to have understanding of how stuff works so that um, you can be a better filter in your own life. I mean, I think so. Back to your question about like what skills do kids need to have? So, number one, I'd love for them all to be exposed to coding. If I'm the minister of education of the universe, that's what I'd say. Number one, um, well, I'm not going to rank order them, but I will say being able to problem solve and to draw on all resources, their their classmates, their teachers, their counselors, their parents. We don't want to leave parents out. We we want them to be able to pull information from everywhere, and then the next tool to be able to solve their problems. And then the next tool is you want them to be able to filter. Knowledge used to be at the church, in a library, um, those two locations, at a university, that's where knowledge was. And a professor or a smart person or a teacher or whatever, or a lecturer, they would like, they would kind of like go with like a sponge and they would soak up all the knowledge and then they'd go out to, back to their hometown or wherever. And then they would kind of like spread the knowledge to their homeschool or their school community in their area. Knowledge doesn't work like that anymore. It's not infinite, but it seems like it. It's instantly accessible, typically, or for free or for a small subscription fee. It's and it's way too much. I mean, kids are drowning in information.
Hmm.
Um, and so you need the skill to be able to filter, both for moral reasons and for just practical reasons. You need to be able to turn it off, and you need to be able to use what's going to be useful to you in your life and enrich your life, and um, not be someone else's tool, but to use technology to meet the ends that you decide. And those are things that are practiced, and I'm not sure that that's kind of the point of teaching technology in schools right now, but I think that should be the motivation. Like you want to be in control of your own destiny, and tools will help you get there if you know how to use them. Otherwise, like other people will use you just to advertise to you on social media, for example, right? Like, um, so are you going to use the tools, or are they going to use you? Because I think tech's here, and it can be scary. And if you're not sure if the movies that your kids watching or the video games are playing are good for them, well then, as a parent or as a teacher, that's your right to ask that question. and for students, and to ask, you know, how is what I'm using going to help me out in the future? What kind of person is it going to help me become? And that can be like a moral thing, but it can also just be a really practical thing in terms of getting a job, in learning. It can be, um, learning for learning's sake, or learning to get a skill. So that's a bit of a soapbox. I apologize for that one, but
No, it's okay. I was thinking metaphors in my head for what you're talking about there, actually, as we were talking. But you know what? I think we have discussed the issue today at quite length, and I think so. We're about an hour now.
yeah,
So why, rather than continuing the discussion, I think this is
sure,
a good place to end it. Where can the audience find you if they want to find more about you? We have a lot of teachers who listen to my podcast. Understandably,
sure,
some of them might even want to hire you for a camp, right, at their
yeah,
school.
that would be great. Yeah, so
So check him
you
out.
can, yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, so you can find us at coderkids.com. Super easy. My email address is james@coderkids.com. So again, super easy. We've got a YouTube channel, Coder Kids. We got a podcast, the Coder Kids podcast. Everything's super easy. So I could give you those links, but yeah, if you're a teacher and you need resources, I'll try to hook you up for free. I won't charge you anything. I believe in this mission, and being a teacher is hard enough. I just like to give you the tools. So, and of course, we do summer camps and private tutoring and after school programs, and I think we're a fun place to do it. But thanks for having
That's
me on.
awesome. No,
It was
thank
it
you.
was really great.
I'm going to clarify something really quick. Just the way
Sure.
I promoted you there at the end, it probably sounds like you paid me to say that or something. He did not. I just thought, you know what, this is a cool idea. This is a cool project that he's doing. Uh, I don't know James prior to doing this interview, really. We
Yeah.
just met randomly on the internet, to be honest. But thanks for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate your content, and I'm actually going to be implementing a lot of your suggestions, I'm sure.
Well, I hope so. And you can always contact me, and hopefully, I'll help you
Oh,
out.
I
So,
might take you up on that.
okay, sounds good. All right. Thanks so much.